The regular season's over, but the fun doesn't stop here. Today, we're talking through the best fantasy picks for the wildcard round of the NFL playoffs on the Fantasy First Down. I'm Ben Wasley. Welcome to the Fantasy First Down. It is time to get into some fantasy football advice for the playoffs. But first, some exciting news on my front. Fantasypros has just released the rankings results from the year, and I finished as the top quarterback and DST ranker this year. First time in a while I think anyone's done number 1 and 2 positions. So very cool to get honored in that way. Much appreciate Fantasy Pros giving me an opportunity to be among the 200 people that is in that rankings competition, ranking against some real studs that have been in the industry for a long time. I'm relatively new compared to them. So it's very cool to be going up against those guys. Overall, this season, I finished 11th overall. 2 years ago, 3rd was my best finish. Finished 7th in the draft rankings last year. So 11th. Happy with that. Was hoping to get another top 10, but 11 still very solid, so we're happy with that. As always, thank you to those of you that reach out and follow that stuff. Your support is much appreciated. Let's get into some fantasy football, though. And we're going a little bit niche today. We're looking at the best starts and sits for the wildcard round of fantasy football. Specifically, I'll be talking through the situations when you're in a league where you can only use one player once for the whole playoffs. Plus, I'll be talking about any situation where you've got just a standard bench size, and we're talking about whether you should start players over others. So a normal start sit show with a little bit of bonus. We'll go through it pretty quickly because there's less games and less players. If you got any questions, leave them in the comments below, or you can hit us up on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. These rankings are up at ffdfantasyfootball.com. Plus, it would be great if you could like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll have stuff coming out throughout the off season. Very soon, going to start talking about the NFL draft, for example. But for now, we're talking about wild card weekend. And let's start off with the quarterbacks. And no surprises here, all the main guys up the top. I think the really interesting ones are in that Mayfield-Darnold situation. There is a real risk that Baker Mayfield only plays one game in the playoffs, but he does go in as favorite. This would be a solid game to start him. The problem is, if this is the best week to start him, he's probably going to lose. So it's kind of an awkward situation there. I'd be more inclined to lean towards a Sam Darnold or a Justin Herbert. I think Herbert in particular has a very solid matchup against the Texans. He could be very productive in a losing situation. But the one that's probably the easiest one-off start is Bo Nix. I'd expect him to score plenty of points against Buffalo, but then they're definitely going to lose that game. So Nix is the strongest of the guys that are probably going to be one and done. And he's someone I feel very good about starting in a one-start league. Now, if you're just in a normal QB league, obviously keep it simple. Go with your starts, especially in your drafts. And I talked about this in my other draft video. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, definitely the best guys to be drafting first overall in the vast majority of these sorts of leagues. Running back wise, and I mean, there's no surprise. Guys like Barkley, Henry are up the top. Bucky Irving, very useful one-time starter as well, but probably the best one-time starter. Kyren Williams, very good, very high risk they'll lose that game. And for that reason, I think Williams is a guy that you can start here on the one-off occasion. James Cook a little bit lower than you would usually expect. Kind of hard to run on Denver. Definitely wouldn't be starting him this week. Mixon also a little bit lower because the Chargers are hard to run on. I do think that potentially someone like a Brian Robinson is going to be a real disappointment. So anyone from him downwards, I just wouldn't even be considering starting. I think they're going to really struggle in those matchups. So it's really only guys from Dobbins and above that I would even be considering. Irving and Williams are my favorite 1 week starts, depending on how many guys you need to start in a week. If you want to go a little bit more niche, then I'd be thinking towards Josh Jacobs. Wildcard wide receivers. And there's not a lot of good starts here. Jefferson obviously gets a very solid matchup against the Rams and what's now going to be in Arizona. Puka Nacua is a solid one-off option. He's probably my favorite one-off option of this week across all the positions because he takes on the Vikings, who concede the most wide receiver points, especially the out wide receivers. And the Rams are probably going to lose that game. Mike Evans, another solid start, but you can probably wait to next week for him. AJ Brown, very risky, hasn't been practicing, but will probably play. Nico Collins, another okay one-off start, but I probably prefer Lad McConkey as a one-off start. I think he's going to be better in PPR specifically. These are half PPR though. Terry McLaurin, solid option as well against Tampa in a really good matchup. Cortland Sutton, tougher matchup. You have to feel like they're going to use him a lot. For that reason, if you're in a league where you're going to have to start quite a few wide receivers each week, and we want to leave some of the better guys for later, well, I think Cortland Sutton is a very good option this week. And I also don't mind Jordan Addison, given the chance that you will probably see Minnesota win this week, but then you can start Jefferson next week in that matchup against the Lions, presumably. Tight ends. Mark Andrews obviously is going to be one of the studs throughout. I wouldn't be starting him this week. Very good chance that they'll win. But Zach Ertz is probably the next best option. They should be able to pass the ball a lot on Tampa, but you'd expect them to lose. Zach Ertz got a lot of touchdown upside. There's not a lot of depth at the tight end position. And two of the best tight ends in Sam Laporta and Travis Kelce aren't even playing this week. So presumably starting one tight end each week. I feel like if you use Ertz this week, then you've got options on Andrews, next week, probably, given there's a real risk of them losing, and then you can use Kelce and Laporta in the last 2 weeks. Plus, there's some other options if they lose. For example, if Laporta loses, presumably to Minnesota, all of a sudden you can bring in TJ Hawkinson. So there are alternative options here, but in a one-start situation, Ertz is my favorite this week. If you're just looking for guys to start, there's really not a lot going on there. Those top fours are the only ones I even feel okay about. I don't even love Freiermuth. That's not a great matchup against the Ravens, so realistically, ideally starting Andrews, but Ertz and Hawkinson are okay options, and everyone below that, you're just kind of hoping and praying that it works out. Wildcard kickers, Chase McLaughlin. Chase McLaughlin is the guy for me this week. With kickers, just start the guy on the top of the list that's available to you. Really don't worry about what's going to happen moving forward. Just start the top available guy, because we can start worrying about that next week when you've got guys like the Lions and the Chiefs in there that are probably going to be in that Super Bowl situation. That's when you start worrying about the niche guys. And finally, DSTs. Same situation here. Vikings up top from the Ravens and the Bills. That's going to be the best matchup for all of those teams moving forward. So just start the top one that's available to you. That's my advice in that situation. Very short video today. Hope it has been helpful if you are playing playoff fantasy. If you've got any questions, like I said, just hit me up. You can hit me up in the comments below, or on Instagram at the Fantasy First Down, or on Twitter at Fantasy First Down with no O. Please like and subscribe. That would be much appreciated. And of course, our rankings are always at ffdfantasyfootball.com. Currently working on the Dynasty rankings. That will be out within the next week or so, and also doing some NFL draft stuff. So the next week or so is when you'll start to see some of that stuff coming out. If you're seeing stuff coming out earlier, it's probably been a little bit rushed by people, because this stuff should be taking time. There's a lot of research that needs to go into it. Need to look at every single team in their situation. So a little bit of patience, and we'll have that out very soon for you. But as always, if you've got questions and you're unsure, you can just hit us up and I can help you with your specific situations. Look forward to chatting to you guys next week on the Fantasy First Down.